Hello everybody. My work is about religions in America. I'm going to talk about the present and the past, and about the importance of religions in the United States. First of all, we should say that the USA is a very religious country, and here we're going to see some examples. There are thousands of religious buildings, temples, churches, synagogues all across the country. On Sundays, there are so many people going to church that it's easy to find traffic jams in some cities. Can you imagine that? In every bookstore, there is always a section for religious books. And do you guess why? Because these particular books report a huge volume of sales. They really deserve a special section for their own. In the States, the Bible has always been, and keeps on being, the nation's bestseller every year. As well as Disneyland or Disney World, there are also amusement parks or thematic parks devoted to religious themes, as we have seen in an episode of The Simpsons, if you remember. You can find religious messages like Jesus saves in billboards, in t-shirts, in stickers. There's actually a merchandised image of Jesus in the States. Now, some gross statistics. 90% of Americans say they believe in God. 40% attend church or synagogue at least once a week. 60% are members of a local church or synagogue. And 40% of young people think that religion is very important in one's life, much more than young people in other countries. Although the Constitution of the United States declares the separation of church and state, religion has always been relevant in political life. The motto of the seal of the United States says, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God," which is a sentence from the Bible. The Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag says, "A nation under God." In all American currency, bills and coins, it is written, "In God we trust." Presidents take their oath of office on the Bible. Every session of the Congress opens with a prayer. And it is very common, in fact, politicians usually name God in their speeches. For sure, as a way of giving an image of honesty and showing that they are reliable people. Religion in the United States today is built on the structure of Protestantism, Catholicism, and Judaism. But these are big groups. Within each group, particularly within Protestantism, there is a great diversity. Among Protestants alone, there are almost 200 different religions. So, in the States, there is in fact a huge diversity of religions. In Argentina, if we want to make a comparison with our country, 77% of the population is Roman Catholic. In the States, to reach that percentage, we need to put together all the religions that coexist in the country, hundreds of different religions. This diversity is maybe due to the First Amendment to the Constitution that protects the individual's right to practice the religion of his or her choice. So many immigrants went to America to be free to practice their religion without fear of persecution. As we have already seen, Protestants are the largest group, even if they are divided into many religions, as we are going to see now. By the way, this is the Luther's rose, one of the main symbols of Protestantism. There are two big groups in Protestantism in the States. The so-called mainstream Protestants, where we can find the Puritans, the ones that came from England in the Mayflower in 1620, the Episcopals, who also came from England later, Presbyterians, who came from Northern Ireland, and Lutherans, who came from Scandinavia and Germany. These are the most important and most numerous groups of Protestants. But on the other side, there are the minor Protestant religions: Baptists, Methodists, Mennonites, Pentecostals, and many, many more. Catholics are the second largest group. What you see here is the coat of arms of the Vatican City, the headquarters of Catholicism. In the 16th century, the first Catholics who came to the States were missionaries from Spain, Portugal, and France. They settled down in Texas, New Mexico, California, and Florida, what is now the south of the country. In the 17th century, new Catholics came, but this time from England, and they established in Maryland. In the 19th century, more Catholics came from Ireland, Germany, France, and southern and eastern Europe. And finally, in the 20th century, millions came from Latin America. During the 19th century, the American society was predominantly white and Protestant. These people felt they were the authentic Americans and were often intolerant with Catholics, as it's shown in the movie Gangs of New York, for instance. And here we have the Jews. What you see here is the menorah, the seven arms lamp, one of the most important ritual elements in the Jewish culture. Jews are the third major group, though it's far from the other two with a small 2%. Many of them went to America during the 19th century to escape persecution in Europe. Here we should clear something up. When we speak of Jewish people, we may go wrong and confuse Jewish origin and Jewish faith. Nowadays in the States, about 6% of the population has Jewish origin, but most of them have lost their religious beliefs, so only 2% of all Americans now belong to Jewish religion. Like Catholics, Jews had to face hostility and have been hardly discriminated against, but now they are more readily accepted. First of all, because many of them have discarded all those practices that made Judaism seem so exotic, and they have adopted a more Occidental way of life. But also because of intermarriage between Jews and Christians. Half the Jews are willing to marry non-Jews. In the last decades, some things have changed. Since the 60s, mainstream Protestant churches have lost many members that had been captured by some fundamentalist Protestant sects. Catholics are increasing in the United States, coming mainly from Latin America, but they don't participate in church as much as before. Protestants, Catholics, and Jews have come less divided. Anti-Catholicism, as well as anti-Semitism, are now mainly confined to radical groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, but people in general are much more tolerant. However, September 11 has triggered a feeling of mistrust on Eastern religions. Buddhism and Hinduism, that had been widely tolerated until 2001, were suddenly on the eye of the storm. But after that episode, Americans started learning more and more about Eastern cultures, so now young people are much more tolerant about those beliefs. The electronic church is the name that receives a very modern and particular kind of church. These are groups of fundamental Protestants, and though they appeared long ago, they started to grow in the 80s. They are groups of evangelicals that use particularly radio and TV as a way of spreading their faith. Since the 80s, they had been adding more and more members to their worships. They are particularly successful among lower classes, and they are spreading all over the world, but Latin America is one of their main targets. So be careful, my friends. You'd better turn off the TV set at night.